When I started leading people in ceremony, what I witnessed was it was the most efficient way for women to remember who they are. And when women remember who they are, it turns on 1,000 different lights in their body to have access to talents that were dormant, to creative solutions that were dormant, to visions that were dormant. It's just really amazing how you can like light a candle and change your whole life.
My kids are 2 and 5. I've struggled with the guilt. Can we speak to that?
I think it's important to understand that every mother and every child is different. The first line of defense is to ask yourself, what are all of the rules and beliefs that I have about motherhood and the amount of time I should be spending with my kids? And write those down. Bring it into your sacred start and really connect with your soul, like the soul of your children, and ask, what's going to work for us? For me, a big part of the way I mother is showing my kids what it looks like to be a go-getter. I really believe that our kids knew our fullest expression before they came in. A big part of being my fully expressed self is being an incredible mother. Being the best version of myself is being the kind of mom that I came here to be. I think because my kids can feel how conscious I am about it, it's impacting them in a positive way.
Hey loves, do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are tuning into this. It helps grow the show more than you know. Thank you so much again and enjoy.
How was that transition and move, and how did that all get orchestrated?
And it was during that time when I was in therapy weekly because I was really struggling. And one day I walked into my therapist's office and she had this circle of chairs on the floor. And I could smell the incense in the room. And I'm this preppy girl from Boston. You know, I walked in every day wanting to like talk about how much I hated my body and my polo shirt and pearls. And I looked at this circle of chairs on the floor and I just started to cry. And I had like goosebumps head to toe. And I just looked at her and I said, what happened here? And she looked at me very confused because here's this like last person you would ever expect to notice. And she said, I'll tell you when you're ready. And I wanted in on whatever this thing was. It was really, I was having a remembrance. I felt like I had been in a circle like this before, but I'd never seen anything like that with my human eyes in this lifetime. Right. So I was just sort of like knocking down her door, literally and figuratively, to get into ceremony. So I started sitting in this sacred feminine ceremony with her.
Oh, wow.
And I had a very successful emotional eating company at the time. And I was very relatable. That was like my whole shtick. And I was like the girl next door. And I started seeing in ceremony, me leading ceremony. Oh, wow. And seeing women in a temple and seeing large groups of women outside. And I was petrified about this idea because I come from a very traditional, normal background from Boston. And
couldn't be the more supreme opposite of all of those things.
Supreme. And I had built this whole company around being normal and around being a mom, and I was married to a doctor, and it's just like all these things. So I really thought I had to choose between my entire life falling apart or what was getting clear was my path that I was here to take. But what started happening was my life started falling apart anyway. And which I think often happens when we are ignoring what we're actually here to do. Yeah. So it was really through ceremony that I started getting visions of leading women in these ceremonial experiences. And I don't do plant medicine in my ceremonies. A lot of people assume that that's what I'm talking about, but that's not what it is. And I would just sort of look around in the visions and ask, where am I? Am I staying in California? Am I moving to Ojai? Am I buying like a place in Bali? You know, like all the places that I felt like I would be accepted.
The quintessential places.
Yes. But I would look around and I would see the white pines and the white oaks, and I'd see the foliage in the fall. And I thought, fuck. It's my home. It's Boston. It's New England. And I didn't want to do it because I knew it was maybe going to feel like an uphill battle because there's so much Puritan culture that's still happening in New England. But I was called. And the truth is that it has been hard. And it's been challenging to find community that gets me and supports me. I have found that now, but I had to sort of continue to expand my radius of like how long I was willing to drive. But what's been so amazing is that over the past 7 years since I've been there, we have a global community in my spiritual community, Holy Woman, but we also have a really vibrant local community. And it's been so special. So we have a 23-acre retreat center half an hour outside of Boston. We have a temple on the land. And I'm just like the town witch, you know? And it's
if you're having any issues, go to the town witch.
Totally. And it's, I mean, talk about being brave. It was hard for me to go back to pretty much my hometown. I live in the next town over and come back completely different and not who I was. And I run into people that I know from high school.
Oh, yeah.
I run into people that I know from college.
How is that? Because
it's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that probably they don't care. A lot of it is me. You know, we've been brainwashed to believe that we're not supposed to change. There's this real celebration of consistency. And I'm very different than I was. You know, when I was in college, I was like the head of the social group. So I planned 4 parties a weekend.
At the sorority.
I mean, we didn't have Greek life, but I was the Greek life in collge.
I can imagine that.
You know, I was always the one who was like playing flip cup or doing keg stands, like whatever the things that, I mean, it was just, I was a party girl.
Yeah.
And I married a college football player. And now I'm a
he's
priestess
doctor.
and he's a doctor and he leads men's groups also. So Jonathan helps men understand how their repression of their emotions impacts their sexual health.
Wow.
So we're just like a bunch of weirdos. And, but the truth is that the people that we grew up with or we went to college with, most of them really respect and are interested and are curious around what we're doing. Yep. And that's been so wonderful to see.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, it's to be able to go back to your hometown and also be the light and the one that is causing transformation and change as a couple, and now with your families and, you know, with places for them to actually go.
Yeah.
Because I'm even thinking in my own life of like, going back to Chicago, like I left in 2015, but there's a little bit of cringe factor because I'm like, I don't know. But I can see that so many people will reach out on DMs and people that I went to high school with or college with, they're like, tell me more or send me this meditation. You know, it's like the little things that you're like, okay, seeds are being sprouted and planted and we don't even know it.
Exactly.
And I think that for whomever needs to hear this brave conversation today, it's trusting even that intuition and trusting the visions that you have.
Yeah, because sometimes the visions and the intuitions we have, you know, we won't see 90% of the impact that they're having. You know, just, you know, since we're on the topic, like someone who you may have grown up with sees one Instagram post and that impacts something that they do that day, which then impacts something else. And so all you can really do is follow the nudges. And one of the reasons why I think ceremony is so important is because I believe we're in this time when we're all inventing new ways to be. We're all inventing new careers. We're in this moment of creation. And so we can't see what we're meant to do outside of us. So we have to go in and close our eyes and get the download of what we're supposed to do and have our soul show it to us, because we're here to create new things right now, I believe.
And I love that you're sharing that, because wherever anybody is and however this is landing, maybe that is the nudge today, you know, to explore more of that, you know, makes you come alive. So you speak of ceremony and you are now really known as a priestess.
I am.
Which is wild and amazing. So can you talk about both of those things? What are they essentially? Because you said you don't use plant medicine or psychedelics in your ceremonies. So can you just unpack that whole piece for us?
Yeah. Also, I have nothing wrong with plant medicine or psychedelics. Just want to be clear about that. It's just that I don't do them.
Okay.
I don't lead them in my ceremonies. So that same therapist who had the circle of chairs on the floor, she is also a priestess. I did not know it at the time. And so I have been working with her as her apprentice for 12 years.
Wow.
And so the amount of study that I've done in our lineage, which is the 13 moon mystery school lineage, has been, I mean, just as much as any priest or rabbi or anybody would do in a traditional religion. And then I went through the process of ordination 2 years ago, which is like a really deep dive around. And when you're in a priestess lineage, it's really, is your life and your whole being and your whole soul in integrity with the lineage? And so I had a lot of inner work and rearranging to do because, like any woman alive, I had all these wounds that I was working with around wanting to be liked and wanting to be relatable and feeling like I didn't want to be the weirdo, you know, just all that.
You want to fit in.
Patriarchal brainwashing
Right, of course.
shit.
Yep.
And I really devoted myself to this work because in the lowest point of my life, when I was feeling so incredibly lost, it was ceremony that gave me the clarity that I needed to move forward. And when I started leading people in ceremony, as I started studying more and more, what I witnessed was it was the most efficient way for women to remember who they are. And when women remember who they are, it's like it turns on 1,000 different lights in their body to have access to talents that were dormant, to creative solutions that were dormant, to visions that were dormant. It's just really amazing how you can like light a candle and change your whole life, you know?
Well, from the inside out and the outside in. I mean, it's incredible. And so when you decided that you wanted to kind of move into this path, what were the things that you kind of struggled with the most? Was it family, friends, existing clients? Because I know you've been in this online world.
I have.
For years.
For like 15 years.
Yeah, like I've heard your name from like way back when it wasn't, you know.
I was not a priestess.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so how is that transition? Because I also think that, you know, there is whatever you want to call it, the 7-year itch or the 7-year birth and death cycle. We can brave new frontiers of expanding into ourselves. And I feel like that's what you're giving women permission to do.
Thank you.
And we got to walk the jungle and the forest.
Yeah, it's edgy. It's really edgy. Well, there's a few different things that happened. First of all, anything that was happening outside of me was really just a mirror of what was happening inside. So I'll speak to that, which is I had to really work my edges around, is this real? And is this just so weird? And the thing that helped me with that was doing research into sacred feminine history. And I got really curious about when were they doing ceremony? What kinds of ceremony were people doing? What was life like? You know, were we ever guided by the sacred feminine? You know, all these questions.
Right.
So I went on a long, like 10-year deep dive into the research of the history of the sacred feminine. And what I discovered was on the timeline of human existence, the sacred feminine reigned this long, and we've been in a sacred masculine patriarchal society for this long.
No.
So
wow.
When I figured that out, I was like, what happened? I got mad. And what you can track is that the number, because what I believed was, the sacred feminine maybe just like wasn't ever a thing or it just sort of fell out of fashion. But what I learned from my research was that the rise of the oppressive patriarchy, their number one tool that they used to steal land and to have power over people was to erase the sacred feminine. Whatever way the sacred feminine was alive in a society, that's where they went first.
Wow.
So I really started to see how the erasure of women's power is completely synonymous with the erasure of the sacred feminine. And if that was the thing that the patriarchal leaders knew was going to completely make us controllable, what would happen if we put it back? And so when I started to understand how those beliefs that I had was just the brainwashing working on me, I felt my own fury. And I could see how, me thinking that I'm weird is exactly what they want to think. Because if we villainize our own really natural ways of being as women, then we're going to shut it down ourselves before we even have to let it out. And then we're doing the work for them. It's like very sneaky and smart.
Right.
Totally.
Totally.
So when I started seeing how my own limitations were just a reflection of my own patriarchal brainwashing, I was able to rewire those through my research, through being in ceremony, through speaking to other women who are, creating new communities, realizing that I'm not weird. And through doing that, I was able to really stand in, this is who I am and this is why I feel like it's important. And I had this really great moment. My friend invited me to a party at Harvard, and
Oh, wow.
I was in this initiation. I was being ordained, and I knew I could either introduce myself as a spiritual life coach, or I work in personal development, or I could say I'm a priestess. And so, of course, I walk up, I'm like, hi, how are you? What's your name? And it's the head of the physics department at Harvard.
Oh my
And I'm just like, okay, here we go. And he's like, I'm like, what do you do? He's like, I'm the head of the physics department. And he's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a priestess. And he goes, wow, tell me everything. And it was just this incredible moment, because the truth is that priestessing and physics are actually the same thing. Because
similar,
what I'm really doing in my ceremonies is holding a certain vibrational frequency that aligns with people understanding the separation between the path of the should and the path of the soul. And it's so cool that I know how to do that. And it just works every time. It sort of surprises me.
Well, and I love that we're getting into the sacred feminine, because I'm just even kind of coming into, or the visions that I'm getting right now is, you're in Massachusetts, Boston, and the Salem witch trials, which I feel like if you go back in history, I mean, you can share more about that, but just the history piece of it.
Yeah.
They were killing the witches.
Yep. Yeah. And really what they were doing, I think this is the important thing to understand, is that they were killing outspoken women and calling them witches. And that has had an impact on all of us because, we know through the study of epigenetics, and we also know through the way that people code story and metaphor and folklore in our brains, it deeply impacts our psychology and how we see ourselves. And so if they were killing women who are outspoken, we are still going to have that fear of being an outspoken woman. And then if you label it around witches and magic, anytime we pull a card, anytime we have a vision, we're going to think that we're evil or that someone's going to come and burn us. And that's a lot.
Well, and also I would love for you to even speak to, some of the traditions or the patriarchy having us think of, just even in my upbringing, okay, if you got your period, can't go do the things, or even culturally, you're not supposed to sit with everyone else, or there's
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, and you're made to think that it's dirty.
Yeah.
If you go back to India, there are, and of course now we've reframed it, because now I know why you're not supposed to go into the temple and things like that, because, well, I was told growing up, it's like, no, you're on your period, it's messy, etc. But now, having reclaimed that, it's like, oh, actually, no, because you are actually way more in tune, and your psychic powers are even
more amplified.
Yeah. And so you can see things, and we've got to protect you. Right.
Okay.
That was the reframe. But growing up, that was not what I was told. At all. And so to just rethink, oh yeah, so I'm not dirty when I'm on my period.
Yeah.
So can you just even speak to that? Because I feel like there is a lot of this conversation starting to kind of uprise within the sacred femininity movement.
Yeah. Well, you just have to think, anything that we've been told is dirty or evil is actually the source of our power. So our menstrual cycle, and the fact that it exactly mimics the cycle of the moon, which is really cool.
So wild.
Because when we just think about that for a second, if we feel that our bodies are an exact mirror of the moon, all of a sudden we feel as big as the cosmos, and we can feel the power of the whole cosmos in our body. And when we can feel that, we're going to stand up for ourselves. We're going to share our ideas. We're going to say no. And that's exactly what the patriarchy didn't want us to do.
And that's why we're the most creative.
That's why we're the most creative. And we're
moon.
gonna guess what? Create situations and solutions for the world that are going to redistribute money, that are going to redistribute land, that are going to create more health and abundance for everybody, because that's how women are wired. It's also how most men are wired too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was so calculated, the things, the wisdom that they took away from us. It was like really on purpose. And that's the thing that I always try to communicate with people. So with our menstrual cycle, just to understand how it impacts our normal thought process and body is so cool. And I just geek out on it all the time. And it's just so important to get comfortable with it, to offer your blood to the land, to do ritual with it, and to get excited when you have your period, because it's just pure magic.
Yeah. Well, in speaking of rituals and ceremony, what are some of the rituals and ceremony you lead other women through?
So I do ceremony in a few different ways. I believe that the best way to think about it is, what can you do every day? What can you do once a month? And what can you do once a year?
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So every day I sit in a short ceremony with myself in the morning. I call it my sacred start. And I have a guide on this. If you just go to Instagram and DM me the word morning, I'll send you the Sacred Start guide for free.
Sweet.
And this is a self-guided, sacred feminine morning ritual. So it's really about clearing out from the day before and emptying out and setting your intentions for the day and getting yourself into the vibe, you know, the vibe that you want to be, understanding that we are the center of the spiral of our whole life. We are creation ourselves. And then once a month in my spiritual community called Holy Woman, I lead a new moon ceremony. And those are so great because I have women come in person to the temple, and then we have a professional video crew that live streams it all over the world. And all of the members sit with their friends in their living rooms that they turn into their home temples. So we have these like little mini groups literally all over the world. It's very cool.
I love that.
And so we spend time really setting our intentions for the next new moon cycle, but tuning into where are we in the cycle of the seasons? Where are we in the zodiac? Where are we in the 13 moon archetypal journey that I've been learned to take people on? And in those ceremonies, that's where I am setting the energetic container so that women can just come into the space and feel who they actually are and get clarity around what they are actually meant to do in this next moon cycle, and to be with other women who are supporting and celebrating them to be that version of themselves. Because in the outside world, we are really encouraged to just be who we should be.
Of course.
As opposed to, you know, being the black sheep, going off in your own path. So that's the monthly thing. And then for yearly, I host a 3-day deep dive, immersive ceremonial experience at my house, which is only in person. And we're on the land and we do deep archetypal work. And it's like you come in one person and you leave another, and you will never be the same.
Oof.
And it's really, I just love it so much.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, now you have an in-person center.
I know. It's really great.
And it's magical when you can do these in person and be held by somebody like you.
It really is. You know, my best friend, Kate Northrup, who introduced us. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks,
She always says that, you know, if you dip fabric in dye for, let's say, an hour, which is what you would do in your sacred start, it's going to be like light blue. If you dip it for 2 hours, like during a new moon ceremony, it's going to be a little bit darker. But if you put it in the ink for 3 full days, it is this like deep, rich color blue. And it's just, an experience that we used to have as women all the time. And I think that's another part of patriarchal brainwashing, especially when you become a mother. which is you're never supposed to leave your kids.
Oh, yes. Can we talk about that?
I also believe that that is a deliberate brainwashing tool to keep women from accessing their creativity and what they are here to offer the world and not just their children. And so I saw my dear friend a couple days ago. She called me and she said, okay, when we see each other, I need you to give me a pep talk. I'm like, okay, on what? She's like, how to leave my children more. I'm like, I love that you knew that I was the person to call for that conversation.
Well, I mean, you're a mom of 3.
I am, yeah.
And at one point, you were a mom of 3 under the age of 4.
4, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are 2 and 5, almost 3, but 2.5 years apart. And I've struggled with the guilt. Mm-hmm. I've obviously have the rituals and tools to be okay with that now. But there was a time when my daughter was really young where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving her again, Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a lot of reframing around it. But I know a lot of moms that I come across every day in whatever circle, in the schools, in the playgroups, in the thing, they probably look at me like, what are you doing?
Yep.
You and I both.
Yep.
And so can we speak to that?
Yeah.
And that's why your work is so important.
Well, I think it's important to understand that every mother and every child is different. And what we can't do, I guess what's important to the first line of defense is to ask yourself, what are the rules that I'm blindly following? So what did I learn from my mother? What am I picking up from my friends? What am I picking up from my mother-in-law? What are all of the rules and beliefs that I have about motherhood and the amount of time I should be spending with my kids and what kind of mom I should be and all of those things, and to write those down. And then I believe, this is why I love ceremony so much, it's to go into ceremony. So whether you bring it to a ceremony that somebody else is leading or you bring it into your sacred start and really connect with your soul and connect with the soul of your children and ask, what's going to work for us? What's our unique alchemy in the amount of time I'm spending on my career and my life and the amount of time I'm spending as a motherhood, and also how are they related? Because for me, I really believe a big part of the way I mother is showing my kids what it looks like to be a go-getter and to be someone who has a really fringy career in a really normal place. And how do I hold that and move through that so that they can decide who they want to be? And hopefully they will then have the bravery to be different also. So a lot of my mothering happens in modeling. At least that's how I'm thinking about it right now. And the truth is, I'm home 340 days a year. You know what I mean? And so it's just that when we are comparing like potentially 25 travel days to an average mom's 0, it feels like a lot. But when you're comparing it to the number of days you could be gone, then, for me, it feels like no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. You're so right when you actually put it in that context.
Yeah. And that's why I think connecting with our soul and what our belief systems are is so important. And that's just a practice that every woman needs to be in right now, is where are we taking in what's happening outside and instead need to come inside. That
is actually such a good practice, because I feel like many times we're just so oblivious, especially when you're just like running the muck with kids and, the to-dos and the lists and the after school activities. And then of course, that first emotion of like guilt sets in, and then the second emotion of like resentment because you see the other moms doing it, or maybe your husband or whomever. And then you're like, I don't see that for myself. And then maybe there's like an underbelly of anger and or rage that needs to be suppressed because, as a good mom, you don't show those emotions at all. And so there's like all of these different layers that they have to kind of work through. And I feel like when you're actually doing this deep dive in saying, oh yeah, okay, I did pick that up. I am trying to win my mother's approval. Consciously, subconsciously. Then we can start to make these new traditions that work for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I really believe that our kids knew our fullest expression before they came in.
Yeah.
And chose that. So all I can do is be my fully expressed self. And a big part of being my fully expressed self is being an incredible mother.
Yeah.
It's not just about my career. It's not just about my life or my freedom. A big part of me being the best version of myself is being the kind of mom that I came here to be. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about that. And it looks different than how a lot of women do it.
Totally.
But I think because my kids can feel how conscious I am about it, it's impacting them in a positive way, at least right now. And we'll have to change, I'm sure soon.
Well, and I want to also segue now into, as we're in motherhood and for the moms listening, we want to reclaim our femininity.
Yeah.
But how? Because a lot of things in motherhood is very masculine.
Oh, I think mothering is masculine.
It totally is masculine.
Sure. Which
There's
I think
nothing
is great.
feminine about it.
Nothing.
Nothing feminine about it. I mean, and so how do we then allow or give permission to moms to say, all right, let's do one of these ceremonies or at least, this sacred start for ourselves.
Yeah.
That it's okay that I can pour into me because then I become a better mom, etc.
Yeah.
Many times we just won't believe that.
It's
or
true.
you give yourself excuses.
Yeah.
But what do you say about the idea of, motherhood as mothering as masculine and how do we shift that?
Yeah.
How do we get into the sacred feminine?
That's a great question.
And what walk could that look like?
So the reason why I say motherhood is masculine is because I believe the masculine energy is about holding the container and holding the space. And the feminine is about being able to rest in it. And the feminine is really receiving pattern so that we can create something from that. So the feminine energy is a lot like a plant where a flower can't bloom unless it has drawn in nutrients and water from the soil, unless it has received the energy from the sun so that we can bloom. And then we die and are composted and then serve for a next blooming. So the creation cycle is alive and well in us, where the masculine energy is really about holding the container. So it's really just comes down to, what kind of life do you want? Like, do you want to feel half dead and strung out all the time? Or do you want to feel alive? You can feel half dead and strung out all the time. Like, it's no skin off my back. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to come hang out with you, but like, go, you do you. Yeah. But the thing is that it's not going to get better on its own. It doesn't get better when the kids are older. It doesn't, because there's just, it does get a lot easier to parent the children. I will say that.
Okay.
You're in it right now.
Thank you.
It does get so much easier.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say that my kids just getting older was the permission I needed to feed my feminine. I had to really commit to that as a practice. And what's really important to understand is that our whole society is going to tell us that that's bad because of the patriarchal brainwashing, because of the erasure of the sacred feminine. So we're going against the current, but that's why it's so important to be in a community of other women who celebrate this, who are doing this on a regular basis, so you don't feel like such a weirdo anymore. But if we can take time out of our mothering, and even if you're a business owner, out of the masculine holding that you're giving to your business to feed the feminine. So that could be coming into a ceremony. That could be just being in nature. That could be lighting candles and pulling cards. It could be being with girlfriends. It could be hosting a women's circle. I say make it magical, because when you make it magical, it's like 10 times more nourishing than just getting a massage, because we all have magical receptor sites in our bodies as women. We came in ready for magic. It's just part of being human that we have forgotten about. So when we make our feminine practices magical and not just like getting a manicure, it's just like we feel so juiced up. And when we feel so juiced up, you just get to be happy.
Right.
It's just more fun to be juicy than it is to be like dried up and tired.
Right. Nobody wants to be dried up and tired.
No, but
I love
like
the
so
juice.
many people are.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true, actually. And
and this is the thing. You will probably, not you, the listener.
Right.
You already are. You'll walk into a party or like you'll show up at a soccer game and you'll be the only alive, juicy woman there.
Because everyone is conditioned
to be half dead.
Right.
And so you're going to stand out.
And to complain about all of the things that they have to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. This goes back to the witch trials, is we have a fear and a wound around standing out for being alive because alive women were considered dangerous. And so it is normal that you're going to feel like you're going to die by being a juicy alive person, but you just have to practice staying and continue to put yourself in groups and communities where you're not the only one. So you learn to feel safe being your juicy alive self.
And what I'm hearing is that even if somebody's listening to this right now and they're like, okay, I want to be the way shower, like, or I can't be half dead.
No.
Or dry.
Yeah.
I want to do this. How do I start?
Yeah. I really think the start for me is the sacred feminine morning ritual, which is why I created it, because it's doable. You can do it every day. And there's this whole process that happens when you have to go talk to your partner and your kids and say, hey, guess what? I'm not available between 6 and 7 anymore forever.
Ooh.
And
that's my time.
It's my time. My kids call it mama time. It's deeply sacred. They still hate it. And it doesn't matter because it's so important to me to have that.
I love that you said, and they hate it.
They hate it.
But it's okay.
It's totally okay. Your partner will hate it. Your kids will hate it. Now Jonathan loves it, but it's hard because he's my bodyguard for an hour, just like elbowing the kids away from the door. They're like crawling like, I need mom. He's like, no, like dragging their feet. So if you want that, just DM me the word morning on Instagram because I have some really juicy practices in there. But it's hard to make that amount of time for yourself, but there's so much cool patriarchal deconditioning and you'll get a light shown on all the places where you're still brainwashed to believe that you're not important.
Well, and I feel like, especially in the throes of motherhood, even if you feel like you can't reach out to girlfriends, friends, etc., because I hear that's a common thing. You isolate and you retract.
Get new friends, man.
Right?
Gross.
Yes.
Please.
Go follow Sarah Jenks.
I have a lot of great women who can be your friends. It's great.
Well, and that's the thing, to break that up and to normalize that, you can also have those friends that nourish you and that celebrate your sacred femininity and the practice that you're building every single day.
Yeah. I had a question on one of my calls the other day, and one of my clients said, how do you handle getting drained by your friends and like holding your own? And I was like, oh, I don't hang out with people like that anymore. I just don't. And so sometimes it is about being brave and strong in situations. And sometimes it's about completely rearranging your life so that you get to feel safe and comfortable being who you are.
Yeah. You don't have to host all the bake sales at your house if you don't like people.
Please don't do that. Because again, that's like a should that people have.
It's a should.
People really have to take account of their shoulds.
It's the people pleasing as
list.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to be a huge people pleaser.
I mean, same.
Like I was like captain of the should
Were
team.
you?
Oh my God. I did everything I was supposed to. I mean, just like everything I was supposed to.
You couldn't be there, so you baked like 100 cookies the next week.
Yeah, definitely. And, but I really had to heal all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it first is a big look at ourselves and also these belief systems that we kind of took from all the powers that be, aka mother-in-law, mom, grandma, aunts, etc.
But it's important to understand that they just took it from their moms and they just took it from their moms. And if you go back and back and back and back and back, it's the oppressive patriarchy. So it's just nobody's fault, but we have to take responsibility for not perpetuating those rules anymore.
I'm so glad we're doing the rise of the sacred feminine, and you're leading the pack as the priestess.
Thank you.
Okay, this has been such a fun conversation. I wanted to get to our little igniting round.
Great.
But first, so where can we get a hold of you?
Yeah. So the best place is to go to Instagram.
Okay.
And send me the word morning. So
Morning.
you get on the Sacred Start
Done.
plan. It's just good for everybody. If you want to be in my spiritual community, go to Instagram and DM me the word holy.
Holy.
Yeah, because my spiritual community is called Holy Woman.
Oh my gosh, I love
And we have the most incredible global community. We do ceremony every month. And in that, I teach about the history of the sacred feminine, the impact of its erasure, and exactly how to put it back in your everyday life. So if you are noticing that you have a lot of shoulds and that you don't know who you are and you don't know why you're here, that's really the place to go.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Okay. Well, what does it mean to be brave in this era of life?
So for me, it's about really being the alive, juicy one in the land of the walking dead sometimes. You know what I mean? Because it's not easy. And it can feel, people can project like selfishness onto it, that I'm an absent mother, that
their own insecurities.
I'm not connected to my husband. I mean, all the things. So I receive a lot of projections, and I just have to really, it's an opportunity for me to be constantly checking my own integrity and my own moral compass and what I really want for my own life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what practices are elevating you currently?
Oh, I love this question. So we have a practice that we do in our lineage called empty presence, which is really about sitting. It's a special kind of meditation where we really just try to be the empty vessel, but in order to see things. So I've spent a lot of time reading, researching. I've read maybe 1,000 personal development books. I'm sure you can relate. And I'm so glad I had that chapter in my life. And I'm in this practice right now of, what does my soul have to say about this? As opposed to always looking outside of myself, even when it's someone who I really respect, who's really smart, who's an amazing thinker, author, teacher. It's still looking outside of myself. So can I be in the practice of looking in? And in the beginning, I didn't hear much, even though I'm a priestess, even though I've been doing this, because I spent so long looking outside, it was hard to go in. Yeah. But now because I go in daily, I'm getting some really awesome insights. And I go there for everything, for business strategy, for ceremonial work, for should I connect with this person or not? Should I go on this trip or not? Should this person be my friend? How do I handle this thing with my husband? How do I handle this thing with my kids? It's like inside all the time.
Oh. And finally, what word describes this season of life?
Devotion. Yeah. Deep devotion to the work.
I mean, I can't say this about many people. You are the walking, talking practice.
Oh, thank you.
Of what we need to feel and heal within ourselves to really express our femininity and to really rejoice in it. And so
thanks for saying that. That means so much to me.
Well, and I'm so excited that people get to learn from you and that we had this conversation.
I know, me too. It was really great. Thank you so much for having me.
Until next time on The Brave Table.